Happy Wednesday, guys. Say what's up in the chat as you come in. Welcome to our daily live stream here on Cozy Corner TV, where we react to politics, news, IRL, which is in real life. If you guys ask me to, documentaries, all the things that go on in our crazy but world that we live in, that the Lord gave us. So, with that being said, guys, I am going to run down the menu for you like I always do. It is March 26, 2025. On a Wednesday, say what's up as you come in. In the middle of the week, we almost through. So I'm going to run down what we're going to be going over today. I got a couple clips here, and then something interesting at the end. So first up, we got Victor Davis Hanson from the Daily Signal. Shout out to the Daily Signal. I usually react to a couple things by them a week. Victor Hanson on keep your enemies close but not in your group chat. So this is going to be regarding the group chat that was not publicly leaked, but a reporter was included in a group chat that a couple of cabinet members were a part of regarding some U.S. airstrikes in Yemen. So the media has been having a field day with that because the Democrats just feel like, okay, President Trump finally messed up, so now's our chance. So I even saw a headline where they're calling for Pete Hegseth to resign from his position because of it. So I thought that was a bit overzealous, but we'll see how that plays out. I'll probably play that on the second live stream after I jump off of this one. I'm just going to freelance that one where you guys will be able to jump on here and you won't see me, but you'll see the news story playing. And then we're going to switch gears and go over to Iowa's News Now. Shout out to them. They have 25.4K thousand subscribers. It says heated exchange. Trump intelligence officials face another grilling by Congress over chat leaks. So, yesterday I mentioned that there were going to be a couple of hearings on Capitol Hill. We knew that would happen regarding the text that was shared with the reporter. So we have Representative Mr. Gomez, and he's asking some questions to John Ratcliffe, which is the CIA director, and then I think this is a shorter clip. I think he asks Tulsi Gabbard some questions in this clip. If not, it'll be in the second clip that I play on the second live stream after this one, where you guys will be able to watch the news story on that. But he grills pretty hard, and I believe in this clip he focuses on Pete Hegseth, and he asks John Ratcliffe the question, does he know if Pete Hegseth was drinking or had a few drinks the day or the night that the reporter was included in the group chat? And John Ratcliffe, he gets extremely offended about it, and I believe so does Tulsi Gabbard, but they kind of get into a heated exchange. Zahira, shout out to you. Thanks for stopping by on the channel. Hit that like button for me. Where are you from? Well, I don't usually say what state I live in because of some of the things I react to, but I'm from New York State. And then we're going to switch gears and we're going to go over to Fox 2 Detroit. They have 417,000 subscribers. Shout out to them. It says Trump slaps 25% tariff on imported cars. So we knew that some more tariffs were coming down the pipeline. A lot more are going to take effect April 2nd. I got to see which ones are taking effect April 2nd. Okay. It looks like it's more like reciprocal tariffs on the second, but I'll fact check that. Like, I'll look that up. I know we've seen them come down the pipeline, some individually, some in clusters, but I know April 2nd was a day where President Trump talked about he chose the second, not the first, because he's superstitious. So I know that's when, I believe it'll be reciprocal tariffs. Like, if any country has put tariffs on us because of President Trump's initial tariffs, and what that means is that if the reciprocals kick in, and let's say he's at 25% on his reciprocals, So if 25% was his initial number, now on April 2nd, an additional 25% will kick in, and now instead of tariffs for that country being at 25%, they'll actually be at 50%. So I believe that takes place April 2nd, but today it was the 25% tariffs on imported cars. So we're going to take a look at that. He's in the Oval Office talking about that. We'll switch gears over to Fox News, where they have 13.3 million. VP JD Vance, he went to go visit the Marine Corps today on, I believe he went to Quantico. He was in Quantico, Virginia. So shout out to the Marine Corps. I served 2 terms in the Marine Corps, so love the branch, love the military. It's near and dear to my heart, but especially love the Marine Corps. We're celebrating our 250-year anniversary this year. So he was there kind of talking to them a little bit about that, and also about the fact that the Marine Corps has maintained their recruitment numbers, and that now for the last 2 months, every single branch of the military has hit their recruitment numbers. So he's just kind of there to kind of motivate and encourage them. Then we'll switch over, still on Fox News, but we'll be reacting to Bill Maher warns Democrats, this looks like game over. So Fox News covers a segment where Bill Maher is talking about I forgot the term that he used, but it's not like reorganizing, but it's it'll come back to me. But it's something that they're gonna do with the Senate seats, and basically they're gonna take seats from some states and they're gonna give them to other states. It looks like they're gonna take them from the states that have, I guess you could say, a good amount or a large amount of Senate seats, and they're going to give them to states that have maybe a small amount. Or one thing it does seem like for sure is that they're going to conservative states. So it does seem like these seats are leaving blue states and they're going to red states. But I forgot what Bill Maher called it. There was a term that he used. God, I forgot. But it's just the way that they're going to reorganize the Senate seat. So he'll mention it here on this segment. We're going to cover a little bit of that. They also talk about the fact that right now it's rumored throughout the Democratic Party that AOC is looking at being a 2028 presidential candidate, which I think that's not a great idea. But right now the Democrats have nobody, so I guess maybe they're getting desperate. I mean, I'm not saying that in a bad way, but I'm saying in a sense where it seems like only AOC and Bernie Sanders have been the two that have kind of been out on the road in the name of the Democrats, and they haven't been violent or doing anything crazy or cursing in their rhetoric towards Trump like some of the earlier things we saw right after the election, like post-election. So right now she's one of the loudest voices other than Bernie Sanders. So I guess I can see why that would kind of be lingering around there. But nonetheless, I'm not sure now's the time for that, but we'll see. So we are going to jump right in. We're going to start with the Daily Signal. And with that being said, it's Wednesday, guys. Welcome to Cozy Corner TV. I am your host, Kieran Smith. Call me Q. And we are on the corner. We're on the corner, y'all. So I appreciate you guys stopping by today. We live stream every single day except Sunday over here. So we are going to jump into the Daily Signal, where Victor Hansen goes a little bit in depth about what this group chat entails, a little bit about who was on it and what was in it.
There's been a story out about a leak with national security implications. About 10 days ago, around March 15th, the security team of the Trump administration, which included Pete Hegseth, Marco Rubio, JD Vance, the vice president, advisor Stephen Miller, some intelligence officials, Tulsi Gabbard, there's about 15 people on it. But here's what happened. Somebody, and allegedly it's National Security Advisor Michael Waltz, who was one of the architects of this group chat that was supposedly encrypted, put Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor of The Atlantic. I mean, this is insane. Bottom line, if you're in the Trump administration, do not under any circumstances think you can be friends with people who despise you. Hello, this is Victor Davis Hansen for the Daily Signal. There's been a story out this week about a leak with national security implications. Apparently about 10 days ago, around March 15th, The security team of the Trump administration, which included Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, Marco Rubio, the secretary of state, JD Vance, the vice president, advisor Stephen Miller, Susan Wiles, another presidential advisor, some intelligence officials, John Ratcliffe, head of the CIA, Tulsi Gabbard. There's about 15 people on it. And they were communicating from an inherited protocol from the Biden administration, an encrypted signal media vehicles so that they could talk about national security questions, specifically including whether to bomb the Houthis in retaliation for shutting down maritime transportation on the Red Sea. But here's what happened. Somebody, and allegedly it's National Security Advisor Michael Waltz, who was one of the architects of this group chat that was supposedly encrypted, put Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor of the Atlantic Monthly. I mean, this is insane. He is one of the most hard left critics of the Trump administration imaginable. But he was on there and he listened to these conversations apparently for about 10 days. And then when he was waiting, and he never notified anybody that they had mistakenly put his name on the inclusion list to this confidential information. He just sat there and didn't tell anybody, of course. He was waiting for a big scoop, and he got it when on March 15th, they decided to bomb the Houthis, and there was an internal discussion. JD Vance said this is kind of against the MAGA initiative of not wanting to have optional military engagements. Some people said, well, the Europeans benefit, they need access to the Red Sea. Here we are again. But there was internal discussion for and against. As soon as he heard that, though, he learned that a few hours later, there was an actual attack. He decided he was going to be famous, or in right-wing circles, conservative infamous. So then on March 24th, he published How I Know All of This, and they put me on this chat list. In other words, he didn't ever identify anybody and say, this was a mistake, I don't have a national security clearance, please don't put me on there. No, he just listened in stealthily through their mistake. Yep. And what do we make of all this? Of course, the Trump administration people said immediately this was not classified information, it was just internal discussion. Goldberg said this was a complete lapse, and then all proverbial hell broke loose. The Congress brought people in, how can you do this? Pete Buttigieg, of all people, said this is a massive screw up. Hillary Clinton weighed in. This is a person who destroyed 30,000 emails, some of them classified, and of course was using a private server to transmit classified information, which even James Comey said was felonious. And then we had Leon Panetta weigh in and critical. This is the Leon Panetta, of course, who was one of the 51 intelligence authorities who lied to the country on October 2020 to arm Joe Biden in the debate. But here's my point. Why would you ever put Jeffrey Goldberg? He has a history. He has a history. He was the one in 2020, right during the campaign to help Joe Biden, went back and said in 2018 when Donald Trump was visiting Normandy and France, that it was rainy, and he said it wasn't safe to go to the Maher cemetery to see the American dead. I was on the American Battle Monuments Commission, so I know that cemetery very well. And 19 people didn't deny Jeffrey Goldberg, but in a campaign-timed, synchronized manner, he said that Donald Trump said these people were suckers to die that way. And he said he had 4 anonymous sources that were in the room. He never identified any of them. 19 said he was not telling the truth. Joe Biden almost immediately began cutting commercials and saying that this had something to do with his son, and his son had died. Remember, he kind of mixed up the details that his son had died because he was in Iraq, and how dare Trump, and it really hurt Trump in the 2020 election. A couple of other details very quickly. This is the same Jeffrey Goldberg. Remember that my former colleague Kevin Williamson left the National Review. He trashed me on the way out, by the way. I don't hold any grudges on that. And he said he was going to work for Jeffrey Goldberg, and he announced it at a very high salary. And then before he even started, Jeffrey Goldberg flipped, bowed to pressure, and said he was an anti-abortion person, and they fired him. He doesn't have a very good record for veracity.
Nope.
Why would you ever even consider having his name in your Rolodex?
So this is interesting, the point where Victor's coming from, because John Ratcliffe, when I was watching his Senate hearing yesterday, a couple of clips of it, he said explicitly, like, I don't know who this Jeffrey Goldberg is. Like, he said that, he admitted it. And of course, the Senate's going to grill him because this is just what they do. But what I thought was interesting was when he just said, like, I have no idea who that is. Like, he didn't even say this was a long-term associate who maybe his contact got lost in my phone and I don't know, some way, somehow. Like, this is one of my constituents. Like, nothing. He just was like, I don't know who that is. I don't have any contact with this person. And I thought that was really intriguing. So, immediately I said to myself, okay, either, and only because I have some familiarity with IT, right? This is one of the things I went to school for. So some people are very naive when it comes to the power of what you can do with computers, the internet, networking, IP addresses. So either someone's lying, right? That's alternative one. Or someone is able to, in some way, either mask John Ratcliffe's number and send a text to someone else, some type of way finagle or maneuver to where they can move contacts around or kind of maybe mirror his phone. But the way that he responded, I'm like, wow, he either he's lying, like just outright lying, or he really has no idea who this guy is. He has no idea how he was added to the chat or via through his phone nonetheless. So I thought that was interesting. I did. It's a little worrisome to me because now, of course, that's going to give sabotage, right? So now it's like, oh man, who's getting so desperate now that they would want to do something like this because now they're going to put the administration in a bad light. Oh, President Trump's administration finally messed up. We told you there are a whole bunch of, they want to rob America and steal from the working class, and now they're letting out classified information, which over and over again, Tulsi Gabbard, Pete Hegseth, John Ratcliffe, Kash Patel, they have over and over again said that this was not classified information. This was information that had been shared prior to the reporter being added to the text. This was even some information that the American people knew about. But, you have some people in the Senate who are kind of smart, and they asked the question, well, I believe his name is, it might be Mr. No, it's not Cortez. I have to go back and look. I'm actually going to stream that for you guys right after this in the second live stream, so you'll be able to see the story play out. But he asked his Tulsi Gabbard if a reporter that was from China or from Russia were added to this text or this thread instead of Jeffrey Goldberg, would you consider this classified information that would have been leaked? And I'm like, man, I thought that was a great question. So I was kind of skimming through that video. I didn't really get to see her answer, but I'm pretty sure she's probably going to stay pretty consistent with what she's been saying. But, they're definitely grilling them the way that I expected them to. And the fact that John Ratcliffe has no idea who this guy even is, and he's saying, I'm not even sure, like, how this happened. Yeah, it's definitely giving either someone within the administration is up to something, or at least someone within the White House, right?
The answer is, I don't know, but as a general rule, if you're a conservative, you only deal with hostile media, and that's 95% of them, on the circumstances that you go in expecting a public debate. You don't talk to them off the record, you don't disclose them. Trust me, I've had the same experience. Final note, this reminds me so much of 2010. Remember Stanley McChrystal? He was the commanding officer of all forces in Afghanistan. He brought in a similar Jeffrey Goldberg type person, Michael Hastings, a left-wing Rolling Stones reporter. Why, as a general in charge of intelligence, would you allow a left-wing reporter to be embedded with your intimate conversations? And at one point, an unidentified officer said, there's a phone call and it's Joe Biden, who was the vice president, but he called him Joe Bite Me. Hastings clinged on that, wrote a big letter. McChrystal allowed a officer, they chuckled apparently, and they made fun of the vice president. They went back to Washington. He was recalled, and Barack Obama relieved him from command. Remember, Article 88 says that no active or retired officer, high-ranking officer, can disparage the president, vice president, and cabinet members. I don't think that he meant that to be public, and he didn't say it. He just heard it and did not correct it. But that was grounds enough to relieve him from command. Final footnote, we've had a lot of generals who've said a lot worse about the commanding officer, and none of them, whether active or retired, have faced any of the circumstances that Stanley McChrystal faced. Bottom line, if you're in the Trump administration, do not under any circumstances think you can be friends with people who despise you. And this is a lesson that I hope Mike Waltz learns, and I think he will, and they should press on. This is Victor Davis Hanson for the Daily Signal.
So apparently, John Ratcliffe is a part of the, because he's the CIA director, he's in part of the intelligence team that the Senate was basically having testify. So the person who actually included this reporter is Mike Waltz, and people have even gone as far to say that Mike Waltz should resign, step down, just like now they've started to say about Pete Hegseth. But again, Mike Waltz, his response was very similar to John Ratcliffe's in saying, I am not sure how this happened. I do not know who this individual is. Their answers immediately right away, for some reason, it didn't give me angst. So I'm not going to say that they don't know anything about it, because of course we let this play out. We see what the media captures. We see what more not so mainstream media captures, because they're probably going to be a little bit more honest than the mainstream media, right? So that's probably your Candace Owens, your Ben Shapiro's, but you know your Charlie Kirk's, your Tucker Carlson's. So we can watch how this kind of unfolds, but just looking at their initial response to just everything that was laid out, it just didn't seem like they were hiding something. It really seemed like this was something that came from somewhere where it's unknown, and they're literally just kind of like, we have no idea how this happened. And I'm not saying they're scrambling to figure it out, but that's why I'm saying it's either someone within the cabinet, which I hope it's not, or just probably someone within close proximity to cabinet members who probably doesn't mean the administration well. So, some people are going to say, oh, because you support Trump, that's why you think like that. Well, you don't know anything. But it's fine if you want to assume that, but we still have to give the benefit of the doubt because we don't have the entire story. So that's why I said we watch it as it unfolds. We'll be live tomorrow. We'll be live Friday. We'll be live Saturday. So we have the next 3 days to see. I'll be back. I'll take a break Sunday. We'll be back Monday. So I'm pretty sure as the days go on and this thing unfolds, we'll start to see more and more. And if not, eventually, what's done in the dark always comes to the light. Sometimes it just takes some time. So switching gears, we're going to go to Iowa's news now. And heated exchange. Trump intelligence officials face another grilling by Congress over chats leaks. So Mr. Gomez, I believe he's going to direct this question to John Ratcliffe, and he's going to proceed to ask him what I also thought was a rather offensive question. I don't know, just because I felt like it was a low blow. I felt like it was a shot fired. But he proceeds to ask him about Pete Hegseth and the day or night that the reporter was added to the thread, and what Pete Hegseth was talking about regarding the U.S. airstrikes towards Yemen and the Houthis. Was he drinking that night? You know, I just thought it was a little pathetic. So, you know, you guys can chime in and tell me if that's the wrong way to think about it, but I thought it was pathetic. Kale, what's up? Thank you for stopping by. Hit that like button for me. Trump will clean up. Yes, it looks like that is what the American people put him in office to do, and it seems like he is doing that, and he's making a lot of people upset, and so is his cabinet. So we're going to take a look at what Mr. Gomez has to ask John Ratcliffe and Tulsi Gabbard.
The main person who was involved in this thread that a lot of people want to talk to is Secretary of Defense Hegseth. And a lot of questions were brought up regarding his drinking habits in his confirmation hearing. To your knowledge, do you know whether Pete Hegseth had been drinking before he leaked classified information?
I don't have any knowledge of Secretary Hegseth's personal habits.
Director Ratcliffe, same question. Yes or no?
No, I'm going to answer that. I think that's an offensive line of questioning. The answer is no. I find it interesting that you
Hey,
want to.
I yield
No,
back.
I'm
That's
going to
my
answer.
time.
You asked me a
Director,
question. You want an answer?
No, listen.
You
it's
don't
a
want to
yes or no.
focus on the good work that the CIA is doing, that
No.
the intelligence community.
Director,
You
I
want to talk
reclaim my
about-
time. Director, I reclaim my time. Here, I have huge respect for the CIA, huge respect for our men and women in uniform. But this was a question that's on the top of minds of every American.
I don't think that he's telling the truth. He's lying. Like right there when he says, this is a question that's on the top of the minds of every American. Okay, so when I saw the leak of this thread, the first thing in my mind was not, oh, was Pete Hegseth drunk when this came out? That actually didn't even run across my mind at all. So the fact that, he's just being so overzealous. Like the fact that he's saying this is on the mind of every American. And I literally thought this was a disrespectful question. I just didn't like it. I didn't like it. And obviously John Ratcliffe didn't like it either. He felt like it was offensive.
Right? He stood in front of a podium in Europe holding a drink. So of course, we want to know if his performance is compromised. If people were asking if the General Austin was compromised because of a heart issue,
Was his performance compromised because of a
I
successful
yield
strike?
back, Mr. I bring my
You want to know?
reclaim my
You want to
time.
talk about accepting
Reclaim my
responsibility?
time.
You think you
I
should
reclaim my
accept
time.
responsibility for a successful
Let me ask-
strike to make Americans safer?
I
We want to
reclaim my
focus
time.
on.
I reclaim my time. So here's the thing. This is serious. As somebody, we've been briefed in this committee about using Signal. One of the things they basically said, the most secure phone call, the least secure text messaging. And we know that your people are
I've never heard
Russians,
that about Signal.
Chinese are on your phone.
Gentleman's time's expired.
For the last 2 days, members of the intelligence community.
And we know that your people are Russians, Chinese are on your phone.
Gentleman's time's expired.
What does that even have to do with anything?
Reclaim my time. So here's the thing. This is serious. As somebody, we've been briefed in this committee about using Signal. One of the things they basically said, the most secure phone call, the least secure text messaging.
One of the things they basically said, the most secure phone call, the least secure text messaging. I've actually never heard that about Signal. And the fact that he said one of the things they basically said, I mean, did they say that verbatim? Because basically and verbatim is not the same thing. See, this is Mr. Gomez, he's controversial. He's clearly emotional right now.
And we know that your people are Russians, Chinese are on your phone.
Gentleman's time's
And
expired.
why is he saying that? We know that people are Russian and Chinese on your phone. Like, where did that even come from?
Expired.
For the last 2 days, members of the intelligence community have been asking questions about a Signal messaging group and not asking questions from Democrats either in the Senate or the House on China, Russia, Iran, and the real threats that are going on to the United States. And you can say that you care about the good work that agencies are doing like the CIA and that you care about 140 stars on the wall. But no one's asked me about my second day on the job here, where I lit the fuse that led to a foreign government participating with us to capture one of the senior planners of the Abbey Gate bombing that killed 13 Americans. And in the process, we worked with a government that previously hadn't, that hadn't cooperated with us on counterterrorism matters. Or the fact no one has focused on that within an hour of that taking place, I was on the phone with Director Patel, and a few hours later with Attorney General Bondi, working together, the IC and the FBI working together to bring this person home in less than a week. An unprecedented success for the intelligence community and the law enforcement community. Exactly representative of the kind of work that we should be doing and the kind of work that an oversight committee should be asking about. But instead, we're getting questions about whether or not someone has drinking habits. And you know, I just wish in an annual threats hearing where the American people want to hear about threats, that's what we would be talking about.
Congressman Gomez's maligning of my reputation and not giving me the opportunity even to respond to his accusations. What occurred in that signal chat was an update to national security cabinet members that was also issued around the same time as updates to our foreign partners and allies in the region. There were no sources, methods, locations, or names of targets that were included in that chat. The decision to conduct this operation had been made long before that conversation took place. I do take my responsibility very seriously and played an integral role in providing the intelligence community's assessments that led to the ultimate decision by the president to conduct an operation, which, by the way, was very successful and continues to be very successful. I was traveling at the time, and I was not playing a very specific role, as these chats reflect, in much of the conversation that took place there. Secretary Hegseth, in my experience, has continued to operate in the way that President Trump's confidence in him inspires, which is in the best interest of the American people and our war fighters and ensuring our national security. I think it's wrong to impugn him, especially at a point where he is not here to defend his own honor.
Yeah, so one thing that I can appreciate about Trump's cabinet is that they definitely come off as a unified front. And I think that's one thing that America needed right now, especially with the way the Democrats have been the last couple of years. As I said, I don't agree with the question. You can tell that John Ratcliffe didn't appreciate it. Tulsi Gabbard didn't appreciate it. I really thought it was a demeaning question, but I get it. You know, when he was going through his confirmation, they really beat up every member of the cabinet because they couldn't stand any of President Trump's picks, and I knew that they wouldn't. But some of their Senate hearings were pretty brutal, and Senate hearings can be like that in general. But I felt like some of them were a bit overzealous. If you guys go back and watch, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But I thought Tulsi Gabbard was, you know, she was very straightforward about it. She said, I was traveling at this time, so I wasn't as involved as some of the chats are reflecting. So the chats are showing that she's not having much interaction in the talks. But there's a presence there, which I think John Ossoff, this is someone who is running for a seat in Georgia. I don't know. What do we think about John Ossoff? Not the hugest fan yet. I mean, he did a commercial, you know, he has his black representative friend standing next to him, you know, so, you know, the black people of Georgia can go ahead and gravitate towards the Democrats once again for no good reason. But I'm not going to cut him so short so fast. I don't know that much just yet. I've been doing research on him. You know, I know he's been a media personality before. And he's done a couple of other things. I believe he was in the Senate once before, but I'm not too sure on that. So as we go through the days, like, I'll stay up to date on John Ossoff. Eventually there's something that I will react to that he's doing. I did see him in the Senate hearing, and I got to kind of watch him in action. You know, pretty straightforward guy, seems intelligent. You know, asked the questions very transparently, but you know, you can tell there was an edge about him. Might have been a little emotional, but but you know, that's to be expected at a Senate hearing. So we'll see what happens. But you can tell that John Ratcliffe, and I thought John Ratcliffe made a lot of great points. You know, when he said, "No one's asking me about my second day on the job, all of these great accomplishments." arresting the person that killed 13 American citizens, working in conjunction with Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, and, making some really high profile arrests, and he's just kind of like, none of that's being acknowledged, but instead we're being asked about Pete Hegseth's drinking, habits, which again, I thought was totally out of line. But yeah, I think he made a great point there. I don't think anything that President Trump has really done or his administration has made headlines the way this leak has made headlines. And, it's not surprising, right? What do they say? Bad news travels faster than good. So it's understandable, but it's still sad nonetheless. So switching gears a little bit, we're going to jump over to Fox 2 Detroit, where they cover Trump slaps 25% tariffs on imported cars. Let's take a listen.
It's an honor to be with you today. We just celebrated Women's Day at the White House. It was fantastic, attended by a lot of great women. All women are great. So this is the beginning of Liberation Day in America. We're going to take back just some of the money that has been taken from us by people sitting behind this desk or another desk that's not quite as nice, but they have their choice of 7, as you know. And we're going to charge countries for doing business in our country and taking our jobs, taking our wealth, taking a lot of things that they've been taking over the years. They've taken so much out of our country, friend and foe, and frankly, friend has been oftentimes much worse than foe. And this is very modest. And what we're going to be doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff. We start off with a 2.5% base, which is what we were at. And we go to 25%. And basically, as you know, and as you've been saying, not reporting as accurately as it should be reported because it's a massive story. Business is coming back to the United States so that they don't have to pay tariffs. And I think also because of November 5th, the election, they're very happy. AI is coming back to levels that nobody's ever seen before. It's a new, sort of a new business, I guess, when you think about it. But it's plants are going up all over the United States, and many of them have already been starting. We're getting early electricity taken care of. We're getting permits very quickly for them, and we're going to make their life very happy. They're coming in with tens of millions of dollars. Individual plants will cost 10, 15, even $20 billion. We're going to let them build electricity generating plants along with their plant. And they can't even believe it, and we're going to get them very quick permits, as I've done always. I did that in Louisiana with 2 LNG plants. I got them one permit in 1 day after waiting 14 years, and the other one in 1 week after waiting for 12 years. But this is very exciting to me. This is the automobile industry, and this will continue to spur growth like you haven't seen. Before I was elected, we were losing all of our plants that were being built in Mexico and Canada and other places. Now those plants largely have stopped, and they're moving them to our country. And Indiana, the great state of Indiana, I love Indiana. Honda is building one of the biggest plants anywhere, and they've just started. They wouldn't have done it without this. In all cases, they wouldn't have done it without what we're doing. So we'll effectively be charging a 25% tariff. But if you build your car in the United States, there's no tariff. And what that means is a lot of foreign car companies, a lot of companies are going to be in great shape because they've already built their plant, but their plants are underutilized, so they'll be able to expand them inexpensively and quickly. But others will come into our country and build, and they're already looking for sites. They're looking for mostly sites, and they don't want to take the old buildings that are empty and falling down. They want to build new, and there's tremendous action. There is likewise for other companies and countries like the chip making process. The chip bill was a disaster done by Biden. All it does is give tremendous amounts of billions of dollars to chip companies that will do nothing with the money. They're not going to use the money here. They're going to just keep it. They have plenty of money. The one thing they have is they have a lot of money. In our case, all we're doing is saying you can't come in unless you build here. And the largest chip company by far is manufactured from Taiwan is building here, and it'll give us almost 40% of the chip market just with that. They're spending almost $200 billion in the United States to build a plant, and they've almost...
That's why when President Trump said it's kind of like a new business, I was going to chime in and say not to other countries, but maybe more to the United States. But you have countries like Nigeria, who's been training and learning about AI for some time now. Taiwan is probably one of the biggest territories that has a good grasp on AI. Canada's been talking about it, but not a lot of countries have a great grasp on it. Taiwan is one of them. So President Trump did say that. He said it gives us 40% of the chip market just by, Taiwan building in the United States.
Started. They'll be doing much of the work in Arizona. So we have a lot of exciting things, but to me this is one of the most exciting. Now, outside of one specific day, and that's Liberation Day. That's the real Liberation Day of America, and that's going to be in April 2nd. And I look forward to it. We'll have a little news conference. We'll talk about it. But this is very exciting. So we're signing a executive order today that's going to lead to tremendous growth in the automobile industry. As you know, the electric mandate that we did allows you to buy a car now, electric or gasoline powered or hybrid. You can buy any car you want. We had it so that within a short period of time you had to buy all electric, and the country could never provide the money necessary to build all of those power plants that you would need all over the country. As you know, in the Middle West, they built 8 power stations. That's like the size of this desk or smaller. And they ended up spending $9 billion on 8. And of the 8, 4 of them didn't work. And we're not doing that.
Those are horrible snacks.
You can buy electric, or you can buy gasoline, or you can buy hybrid, or you can buy whatever you want to buy. And that's the way it should be. The market's going to determine that. And you're going to see prices going down, but it's going to go down specifically because they're going to buy what we're doing, incentivizing companies to, and even countries, for companies to come into America and build. And we're already setting records for new plants. I think the new plant number, the tally is just within a period of a few weeks. It's very large. I want to be accurate. It's very large. And I'd like to ask Will just to come and give some of the basics, and then I'll sign it, and it's off to the races. I think our automobile business will flourish like it's never flourished before. Yes, please, Will.
Thank you, sir. As you stated, we've prepared for your attention a proclamation imposing a 25% tariff on foreign-made cars and light trucks. This is in addition to tariffs that are already in place on those goods. In addition to, as you said, spurring increased domestic manufacture of cars and trucks, we expect that these tariffs will result in over $100 billion of new annual revenue to the United States of America in tariff revenue.
I think ultimately we could probably anywhere from $600 billion to $1 trillion will be taken in over the relatively short-term period, meaning a year from now, but starting right away. I think we'll go from 600 to 1 trillion within 2 years, and I think we'll be right from the beginning we're going to be at a very high number, right from the beginning. And right from the beginning you're going to have a lot of construction jobs, but you're also going to have a lot of automobile jobs. So this is very exciting, but it's also exciting because of what's happening with other aspects. And we're going to be doing tariffs on pharmaceuticals in order to bring our pharmaceutical industry back. We don't make anything here in terms of drugs, medical drugs, different types of drugs that you need, medicines. It's in other countries, largely made in China, a lot of it made in Ireland. Ireland was very smart. We love Ireland. But we're going to have that. We're going to have lumber. We're going to free up some of our land. And you'll be able to meet a lot of other standards like fire cuts. If Los Angeles had fire cuts, which they didn't have, that's a gap of half a football field between areas. You wouldn't have had the fires. They would have been contained. But you have fire cuts. And by the way, you sell that wood for a lot of money, a lot of profit is made from that. But we're going to be doing lumber. We're freeing up our land so that we don't have to use outside sources of lumber. Energy, we're doing fantastically well at. You know, the energy prices have been coming down rapidly as we increase supply, and we've already done that. We have Chris and Doug are doing a fantastic job in that. That's Department of Energy and Department of Interior. And they're working together hand in hand because Interior has the land and Energy has the ability to do the drilling and do what they have to do. Our coal areas are going to be opened up for clean, beautiful coal. Germany's opening up many coal plants now. You know, they tried the wind and it didn't work. They almost went out of business. They almost went bankrupt. They tried wind, which is a disaster because it's too expensive and it doesn't look good, kills all the birds, a lot of problems. But Germany's now building a lot of coal plants. China is building one a week, think of that. And they're using coal, which is very powerful. Coal is a very powerful energy. And we're opening up our coal mines again, and we're gonna do, I call it beautiful, clean coal. The technology is so good now that coal can give you tremendous power. At the same time, it can be very clean. But we're also obviously doing oil and gas and various other things. You can do pretty much whatever you want. We don't like the wind because we think it ruins the landscapes, the plains, ruins them. And it's got a lot of problems. It's also by far the most expensive energy. It looks horrible in the oceans. It's dangerous in the oceans in terms of navigation. And if you look at what's happening with whales, you know, in one area, they lost 2 whales, like in 20 years, washed ashore. And this year they had 17 washed ashore. So there's something happened out there. There's something driving the whales, a little bit loco, but they lost 2 in 20 years. And now they lost 17 in a short period of time. So it's something wrong out there. So this is very exciting. This is going to lead to the construction of a lot of plants, in this case, auto plants. And you're gonna see numbers like you haven't seen, both in terms of employment. Takes a little while. You're gonna have great construction numbers initially, and then ultimately you're gonna have a lot of people making a lot of cars. And one other thing, we have the Speaker of the House with us, who's doing a fantastic job. And where's Mike?
I can appreciate that President Trump elaborated on that because he's saying this now, and people might still see pricing not going down as fast as they want. They might say things are still expensive. They might not see the job market just flip just yet. And he was transparent in saying, you know, it's going to take some time. He said you might initially see a lot of construction jobs. And then after that, you know, people will be making a lot of cars. And then after that, you know, you could see a lot more hiring in the dealership arena or, you know, the sales departments, maybe over the phones or maybe even some places even still do door to door. But I just like the fact that he was transparent and he said, hey, listen, like it's going to take some time. So initially the construction jobs will probably pick up first. And that's because of, you know, sites and plants and things like that being built. And then, of course, they'll need operators and things like that. So the car making process. So I can appreciate his transparency there. And if people are paying attention, they'll see that, you know, he's being transparent and saying just because I'm signing the executive order right now doesn't mean we're going to see a major flip in the job market tomorrow or even within a week.
And we're trying to get approved, Mike, thank you very much for being here. We're trying to get approved, if we can. If you borrow money to buy a car, you're allowed to deduct interest payments for purposes of income tax, but only if the car is made in America. So if the car is made in America, you get a loan, you can deduct the interest. That's a big saving. A lot of people in that part of the world, in terms of buying cars, a lot of them don't think in terms of deductions. People that think in terms of deductions are very wealthy people, but people are going to start understanding what a good deduction is all about. So when you get a loan to buy a car, and I think it's going to pay for itself. I don't think there's any cost. I think you're going to have so many cars built, but you're only going to get that deduction of interest if the car is made in the United States of America. So I'm going to sign this, and Mike, I hope you can get that because I think it's going to be amazing in terms of the number of cars that will be made because of it. And I want to thank Howard Lutnick, our fabulous commerce chairman. That's what he is. He's a chairman. He's a very successful guy, a great guy. And we have a big day, Howard, coming up next week. It's going to be good. That's Liberation Day. That's going to be on the 2nd, and that's going to be reciprocal. And I think people will be impressed. We're going to be very fair. We're going to be very nice, actually. We have not been treated nicely by other countries, but we're going to be nice. So I think people will be pleasantly surprised, but it's going to make our country very rich because we're the piggy bank that everybody steals from, and they've been doing it for many years, for decades, so we're not going to let it happen. So, but we're going to treat people very nicely. We're going to treat other countries very, very nicely, and I think it's going to have a very positive effect on everybody, including those other countries. So I'll sign this, and we will see you again on April the 2nd. In terms of this, it's going to be another round, and it's about making America great again, making it strong and prosperous again. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we see there President Trump is signing the executive order, and that was today. So that's going to go into effect today, and he said we'll see him again April 2nd. That's when we'll see, I believe that's the mandatory reciprocal tariffs, but I'll double check that for you guys. I'll see if I could have that for you tomorrow. But I believe that's what it is, because I literally just watched him probably a day or two ago talk about this in the Oval Office, and they were asking him, you know, does that mean on April 2nd, for the initial tariffs you've already issued out, that there will be an additional 25% on what you've issued out? And he said yes. So, and then the reporter clarified, and they said, so right now for countries at 25% and reciprocal tariffs go out, they would be at 50%. And President Trump said yes. So he clarified that. So I'm pretty sure that's what's happening on April 2nd, which is nerve-wracking for some people because we've already had some countries issue reciprocal, retaliatory tariffs on us because of President Trump's actions. And that's just something that we have to learn to understand about tariffs. As I said, there are other countries that are hitting us way harder, way deeper than even what President Trump is doing. 25% is driving people bananas, and there are literally countries that are hitting us with a 150% tariff, sometimes 600%, 500, 250. The numbers are literally crazy. And the White House press secretary, she had a moment about, I want to say 2 weeks ago now, where she kind of went over this during a press secretary during a conference in the White House. She was going over this, and she had a graph where she talked about other countries' tariffs that they had on us. And it was a place like, I don't know, let's say Japan. Just on rice, it was at 700%. So when we really don't understand tariffs, you know, we're getting mad at our president for 25%. And granted, there will be a shift, but if you compare that to what other countries are doing, yeah, to some extent, President Trump is being generous. So I'm not sure what the current tariffs were, if there were any at all. There could have been some, and they could have been extremely low, like maybe 3%, 5%. And yes, prior administrations could have had it that low, while other countries had us at 100%. This is why Marco Rubio said that what President Trump is doing is really resetting the baseline, because it's just not fair where we're at. Like, as far as trade goes, we're not playing a fair game. We really have been not in a good place. We haven't been done right, and President Trump has said that. And when you think about the numbers, it's easier to understand. So switching gears a little bit, Fox News covered JD Vance, Vice President Vance, went to go visit the Marines out in Quantico, Virginia, and he says we care about excellence and patriotism. So that little phrase came from when he made sure to mention that the Trump administration is not focused on the color of their skin, their background, where they come from. They are only concerned about excellence and patriotism. So let's take a look.
Our young people into United States Marines. And that is, I think, the best thing the Marine Corps does for the United States of America. I'm proud of all of you. As General Chuck Krulak said, the Marine Corps does two things. It wins battles, it wins wars, and it makes Marines. And that's a pretty good damn thing to do for the United States of America. So I'm proud of you guys. I'm proud to be here. I'm proud of what you do. And most of all today, I'm proud that I think under new leadership, the Marine Corps and the entire United States military is headed in the right direction. And that's why I'm here today, to talk a little bit about what we're going to do, talk a little bit about President Trump's vision for the United States military, and importantly, after I do that and I serve some chow at the chow hall, I'm going to go shoot some guns, right? Because... So here's the thing.
Under President Trump's leadership, we believe in a very simple principle. We don't care who you are, where you came from, we don't care what skin color you are, we care about excellence and we care about patriotism. And if you are awesome and you are a patriotic young Marine, then we are going to do everything that we can to make you the most lethal fighting force the world has ever seen, and that is what we're doing every single day. No more quotas, no more ridiculous mumbo jumbo, no more diversity trainings. We believe the real strength and the real diversity in the United States Marine Corps is that you all come from every walk of life, come from every corner of America, and you have got the strength and the purpose to win the nation's wars, and that is what the Marine Corps is going to do, just like it's done for damn near 250 years. Now, speaking of that, as my dear friends, and as a lot of you know, well, maybe you don't, because a lot of young faces out here. That's the thing. You know, I'm 40 years old now, and I realize that compared to when I joined the Marine Corps, I'm an old-ass man now. But here's the thing. The best friends that I've ever made in my life, I've made in the Marine Corps. People who came to my vice presidential inauguration and the president's inauguration just a couple of months ago are people that I first met in boot camp, or first met in follow-on school, first met at my first duty station. People who have held my children when they were little babies. People who I've helped welcome new children into the world. You guys have no idea that the people standing to your left and to your right, these are lifelong friends. They're going to follow you around, whether you want to or not, for the rest of your life. And I think that's one of the great blessings of the United States Marine Corps. And one of the things I learned from my great Marine friends, they remind me, is that this November, of course, our great Corps is going to celebrate 250 proud years. And as I know, because I've been to a few Marine Corps birthday balls myself, I'm sure it'll be a total sober, no alcohol celebration for the Marine Corps' 250th birthday. But from one Marine to another, let me just say that we are excited to celebrate the Marine Corps' 250th anniversary, 250 years of winning wars, 250 years of kicking ass and taking names. So here's the basic plan. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to invest in the Marine Corps and the entire United States military like we never have before. Over $1 trillion we're going to invest in building up the manufacturing base of this country so that you guys, when you do go to war, when you have to go to war, you've got the best weapons anywhere in the world. We know from the long history of the United States of America that while the leading edge of American power is you all, it really matters what you guys have in your hands and what you guys have on your backs when you go to war. And so I promise you, from the President of the United States, we are going to send you, if we have to send you to war, with the best equipment, the best ammunition, the best weapons, and we are going to empower you guys to win when you have to. That's the purpose of the United States Marine Corps, am I right? So that's what we're going to do. And of course, I got some good news. You know, over the last few years, some of the military branches had some recruitment problems. Not the Marine Corps, actually. The Marine Corps was the one branch that consistently met its recruitment goals, and that probably has something to do with the fact that the Marine Corps is a little bit smaller, as you all know. But it's
the smallest branch.
This year, now, we have got every single branch of the United States military for the past 2 months has been meeting its recruitment goals, because I think I see in your faces what we're seeing all across the country. A renewed sense of patriotism, a renewed commitment to excellence, and that is what is going to make the United States military the strongest fighting force anywhere in the world. So thank you all. Thank you for being part of it. Thank you for being part of 250 years of great American tradition. Thanks to you guys for being willing to put on the uniform and serve your country. Yeah, I always say that the most important thing that we have in this country, the most valuable natural resource, we got plenty of oil, we got plenty of natural gas, we got great mines and minerals, but the most valuable resource that we have in the United States of America is you all. It's young people who are patriotic and dedicated, who are willing to put on the uniform of the United States and risk your lives to defend your fellow citizens. That's an amazing thing. I know it's easy to forget when you go about doing your jobs and you're just worried about getting through the day, worried about getting to the next week, worried about doing the good job that all of you do, that what you're doing is an amazing thing. And it's easy to forget that because you don't always have the vice president dropping in to say thank you. But I want you to remember that whether you serve another couple years in the United States Marine Corps, whether you're at the beginning of a 20 or 30-year career, that we respect you, we thank you, and this Vice President and the President of the United States know that you guys are the most important resource that we have in the United States Marine Corps, in the United States of America. So thank you all, and God bless you. And the final thing I want to say here is I was actually, and I know I was late. It was funny. What? That is not Marine Corps time, my friends. I remember Gunny Arledge always told me, you know, if you're 5 minutes early or 10 minutes late, I'm sure you guys have heard that phrase. Well, what does it mean when the Vice President is 2 hours late? I guess I'm on time, because who the hell's going to get me in trouble, right? But here's the thing, my friends, is I left, the reason I was a little bit late is because I was in the Oval Office talking to the President, and I stood up and I said, sir, I know we're in the middle of something, but the Marines at Quantico are waiting on me. And he said, oh, I didn't realize that. You got to get out of here. You got to get out there. And I said, do you have a message you want me to deliver? And the President of the United States said he wanted me to tell you two things. First of all, that he loves you, and second of all, that he's proud of you. So let me echo the President, let me echo a grateful nation. You guys just keep on doing what you're doing. We love you, we're proud of you, and we're going to support you every single step of the way. God bless you, Marines. Semper Fidelis.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click.
Semper Fi. Shout out to JD for doing that. I thought that was great. I thought that was great that he did that. You know, it's always nice when the president, your commander-in-chief or your vice president goes out there and encourages you. I know every time that's happened, when I was on active duty, whoever it was always a special time for us. So I thought that it was a great thing that JD did that. I lost the tab, guys. Hold on a minute. Might be able to, I don't know which one it was, but it's okay. Yeah, maybe just for this one. Yeah, so I appreciated JD doing that. I mean, he himself has served in the Marine Corps, so, you know, it wasn't too much of a shock, but it was definitely appreciated. 250 years is a big one for us. And he made a lot of great points. A lot of friends that I have to this day, even if I don't talk to them every single day, they are the type of people that the minute we get on the phone, it's almost like we've never skipped a beat. So, yeah, the Marine Corps does produce, I would say any branch produces that, but, you know, when you've been in one, you're biased. And because I've served in the Marine Corps, I am a little bit biased towards that. I do think it is the best branch, but every branch of the United States military is the best branch. But, you know, the Marines, yeah, they're the Marines. What can I say? So it was an honor to have served. 250 is big, so I was excited about this year. And I was just glad to see the Vice President get out there and just give those guys and those girls some encouragement, because it sounds like he was talking to a group of guys at that point. But just give them some encouragement, you know, because it's needed, especially there's a lot going on in the world today, and who knows if the United States will be called to anything. So the fact that we're starting to hit our recruitment numbers and young people are once again motivated to go in the military, which I thought was really sad when I heard how bad the numbers were dropping. The Marine Corps has seemed to maintain hitting their recruitment numbers, but I'm going to agree with JD on that and say that that's probably because they are the smallest branch. So it's easier to hit their targets. They're not going to have as large numbers as the Army or as the Navy. So it definitely does make sense. But it was a little sad to hear that, you know, the other branches weren't hitting their recruitment numbers, but now they seem to be doing a lot better. So that's super encouraging. So that's a good thing. I thought this was super weird. Growing up, like serving in the military was still a dream for a kid, you know, and it seems like over the last maybe probably a decade, like that's kind of like going down the drain. And I just thought that was just really sad. You know, patriotism was something that was big in my generation and generation before mine and before that. So, you know, it was pretty sad to see it kind of dying out, fizzling out, but it seems like that's not happening anymore. It seems like there's a newfound excitement for the military, and I'm on board for that. I'm happy about that. So switching gears a little bit, we're going to jump over to Fox News, where they cover Bill Maher warns Democrats. This looks like game over. So he's going to talk about the term that I still cannot remember, where they will be moving some Senate seats from certain states to other states. It looks like a lot of, well, not a lot, but a couple that he mentions in here, a couple of blue states are going to lose Senate seats. I know he said New York is going to lose 3. There's another place that's going to lose 2, and after that he named a few that are all going to lose at least 1. And they're all blue states, and they're going to go to, I know he said Texas is going to get some, Florida is going to get some. I don't know if he said Idaho or Iowa, so we'll see that on here. But he says it seems like these seats are leaving blue states and they're going to red states. So he's like, this seems like pretty much game over, as far as the Democrats go. There are some things going around. Shout out to Jesse Waters from Fox News, part of the 5. He talked about how the Democratic Party, it's just kind of getting worse for them. They have one of the lowest favorability rates they've had in history right now. It's higher than what it was before. I remember when it was probably about 18%, the lowest I saw it, and that was probably about 2 months ago, definitely a month ago. I think now I've seen it hovering around 21, 25, and then one media platform quoted at 29. So, it's going up some. It's going up a little bit, but not very much. And nonetheless, they're still at the lowest point they've been historically. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. It seems like they're getting worse for them. Jesse Waters talked about how there's a lot of people moving out of blue states. Another part of Fox News covered, people moving out of blue states is going to make the blue states poor, and it's going to make the red states richer. So that's going to make it kind of pretty much over for elections, meaning that, we're probably going to see some Republican administrations for the next couple of years. I saw one mainstream media platform say, great, Republicans for the next 15 years. So, it seems like that's kind of the rhetoric that's out there, what's going around. So we're going to watch Fox News cover this. They cover a couple things, only about a 10-minute clip, so let's watch.
Growing calls for the desperate Democratic Party to move even further left, as if that's the answer. Top Democrats tell Axios the party is in its...
So Axios covered this. It says, behind the curtain, Dems' dark, deep hole. Top Democrats tell us their party is in its deepest hole in nearly 50 years, and they fear things could actually get worse.
Deepest hole in nearly 50 years, and they list out like 12 reasons for that. And they fear it will only get worse as time goes on. So who's the new Democratic savior this week? Bring in Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's been increasingly discussed as a leading star of the party, even among centrists, interestingly. And now the New York Times is naming AOC as a potential...
So the New York Times covered this. It says, as the left looks to 2028, it waits on Ocasio-Cortez's big decision. Though there is little agreement about who will emerge to guide progressives into a post-Sanders era, virtually everyone interviewed say.
2028 presidential contender. Democrats are doubling down on their progressive policies that lost them the White House and Congress. That's the big picture here. And they're looking for a leader to encapsulate that. Quote, though there is little disagreement about who will emerge to guide progressives into a post-Sanders era, virtually everyone interviewed said there was one clear leader for the job, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York.
So the New York Times, ourselves on TikTok. The New York Times said there's only one clear leader for the job, and right now, as far as they're concerned, that leader is AOC. So I think that's interesting. I'm not sure if I agree with it's the time for that right now, but we'll see what happens.
Picture, and it is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez kind of languishing away at the border. This was during Trump era 1.0. And she's in this beautiful white outfit and she's protesting, and it was very dramatic. And the country is just a long way from that image and that moment, encapsulated by this Washington Post headline. I mean, this is WAPO. I never thought I'd see a headline like this. Trump's migrant roundups have a crucial ally, public opinion. And they note there that 89% support deporting criminals, 62% support deporting non-violent criminals. We're a long way from that line like this. Trump's migrant round.
So this says, the Washington Post covered this. It says Trump's migrant roundups have a crucial ally, public opinion. Yeah, because the people that voted for him to be in office, they don't have a problem with what he's doing. He's doing exactly what they wanted him to do. So the crucial ally that his migrant roundups have is the fact that the public opinion seems to agree with him.
Roundups have a crucial ally, public opinion. And they note they're 89% support deporting criminals, 62% support deporting non-violent criminals. We're
89 and 62. Those are some pretty high numbers.
a long way from that kind of progressivism.
A lot that Mark Penn said the other day stuck out to me about looking at the Democratic Party and making the same mistakes that they did of yesteryear, and it's not standing for something. In fact, I thought his advice to his party was really instructive. He said, make up a list of things you really want, a list of things that you're willing to cooperate with. Are you willing to cooperate with closing the border? Bringing up that picture made me think of that. Or was it all a ruse and you're really for an open border? Are you willing to cooperate with reducing the size of government and the deficit forces them into the Doge situation? Are you for it or are you against it? Do you have things that you want like climate change, inflation, helping working people that you can put forth to do a compromise? And I think Democrats would behoove themselves if they took a good hard look and asked themselves that question. But he was very firm in his warning to his party. If AOC were to come in with a challenge here, he said every moderate that is left, any moderate, I should say, that is left in that party is going to flee. And this is going to be a party no more because they just can't keep moving further to the left based on what we have seen with recent elections.
Yeah, Paul, here's the quagmire. The Democratic base is spoiling for a fight. And we have an NBC poll that reflects that 65% say they would rather not see the party get things done and stick to their gut.
So it says, do you want Dems in Congress too? And it says, stick to positions even if it gridlocks Washington, 65%. Compromise with Trump to gain consensus on legislation, 32%. Oh, Democrats.
Say they would rather not see the party get things done and stick to their guns, even if it means just gridlock in Washington.
Yep.
That's versus 32%. That's Democrats. But when you broaden it out, 50%, majority of the country essentially say congressional Democrats are too critical of Trump. So you have this disconnect. You've got to please the 34,000 people showing up to a Sanders AOC rally, but you don't want to lose the middle.
Yeah, I think, they're misreading the room here, and they're misreading where the fault line is on the left.
I've said this time and time again, the level of tone deafness in the Democratic Party right now is, at minimal, it's grotesque. Because I cannot for the life of me understand what I'm seeing them do. I don't understand what's happening. It says poll, 65% of them say parties should hold positions. So they rather hold their position and not agree with President Trump and the cabinet members or the whole administration and gridlock the government and get it shut down than actually keep moving forward and get things done. And this is why I think personally, regardless of who they put up in 2028, they're not going to win.
Right now, the schism is between the hyper-progressives and this more traditional moderates. So sure, you can get 30,000 people on the mall in Washington, D.C. because that's blue Washington, right? That's progressive Washington. That was a swamp class picture is what that was, okay? But okay, I'm sure you can get it there. But are there no lessons to be learned from the recent election where all the traditional Democratic voting blocs moved to the right? And what Donald Trump really did is he managed to capture a lot of the traditional Democratic blue-collar workers. The reason why he did so well in Michigan, the tariffs are going to help that because this is one of the things that the Democrats have been asking for a long time, which we need to bring back manufacturing. Now, reasonable minds can disagree on tariffs, but the bottom line is he wants to bring the manufacturing here. And just coming up with bumper sticker campaigns like Fight the Oligarchy. If you went into that crowd and said specifically, what is the oligarchy? What are you fighting? Who's the oligarchy that you're really concerned? How does it affect your life? You're going to get blank stares.
Yep.
It doesn't compel. And last thing real quick, we know AOC in this city here in New York. This is the person who killed the Amazon jobs who were coming in here. She was part of that cadre that killed thousands of good jobs. Number two, she was the Duchess of Defunct. So these are all things that have gone way down the tank here that nobody wants, and those are her legacy. Who they should be listening to is Fetterman. That's a different story.
100% agree with that. Agree, and people like Alyssa Slotkin. So your party puts up as a State of the Union response, Alyssa Slotkin, who outperformed Kamala in a ton of places. But then when you look at the map, you've got a top 2026 Senate map. You have only 2 Republicans in districts that Kamala won versus 23 last time around in Trump administration and Hillary districts. So what do? How do you thread the needle? Your party wants someone like Alyssa Slotkin, but the only person getting double digits as party leader is AOC.
I think the party actually understands there's a place for both. The Alyssa Slotkins, Josh Shapiro's, Wes Moore's of the world, they are winning in states that matter, right? They are putting forward a moderate view of how to grow the middle class. By the way, it's not tariffs. As tariffs start to really impact the middle class, voters in states like Michigan that are incredibly impacted by trade with Canada are going to be really mad at Donald Trump. But AOC is getting tens of thousands of people at these rallies, and there are some early signs that Republicans are in a little bit of trouble. First, we've seen all of these Republican town halls.
The Democrat town halls are crazy.
Let me finish, and then it is, for example.
I disagree with what she's saying. I don't think the Republicans are in trouble. Not that I don't want the Democrats to do anything, but I don't think that they're in trouble.
In a seat like Mike Waltz's seat, his open seat in Florida, the Democrat has raised $9 million and the Republican has raised under $1 million. Republicans in Congress now that I'm talking to are worried that they are going to either lose that seat or it's going to be very close. So there's a lot of discontent right now in the country in general. But what I am hearing is that average voters whose prices haven't gone down, who are worried about tariffs, whose friends are losing their job, look at the richest man in the world, look at this billionaire cabinet, and they think, Donald Trump said he was going to make my life better. It's not. It's worse. And AOC and other Democrats are actually putting forward an economic vision for the middle class. And we can talk about everything from middle class tax cuts, not tax cuts for the wealthy. I mean, look at Kamala Harris's platform, quite frankly. Housing.
Which didn't work. How did that work out? 80 million votes for Trump, nearly.
But this is the thing. When voters in the middle class see that Trump's policies are not working for them, and they are not, and Democrats can, the midterm, Republicans, downplay this opposition at their own peril. I lived through the Obamacare town halls. When you start counting town halls,
but the talking point about town halls, I'm sorry, is nullified. Glenn Ivey had a town hall.
Just wait until next November.
I'll send you the footage. We played it on this show last week. Glenn Ivey's in a deep blue district. He held a town hall. He was shouted down.
Because they want him to be more progressive and more anti-Trump.
He was saying Chuck Schumer should step down, but that wasn't progressive
for a different reason than Republicans.
It's interestingly, and we're gathering the footage actually for this show of all the town halls. It's not just deep blue Virginia, it's elsewhere in the country as well. Kaylee McGee-White, someone who disagrees with Marie Harf, is Bill Maher. He thinks Democrats have not hit the bottom yet. Watch this.
After years of chronic pain, Ellie found...
Well, she still clearly has a lot of hope. And I mean, that's okay. That's okay to have.
Really bad news for Democrats.
Democrats have not hit the bottom yet. Watch this.
This is really bad news for Democrats. 2030 reapportionment, there's a group called the American Redistricting Project, and in 5 years we will be redistricting.
Okay, that's what it is. Redistricting. That's what he used. Like a district, so they're redistricting. So that's how these states are like losing some Senate seats and they're going to other states. I could not think about this phrase. I'm like, what did he say? And for some reason, zip codes come into my mind, and that's probably because I'm thinking about different states. But that's what he said, redistricting.
Redistricting project, and in 5 years we will be redistricting. California is projected to lose 3 seats, New York 2, also going to lose a seat, Minnesota, Oregon, Rhode Island, Illinois, all blue states. Who's getting these? Texas, Florida, Idaho, and Utah. I mean, this looks like game over.
Game over, Kaylee.
And this is the political reality that Democrats don't want to face. And look, we can talk about how there's a lot of anger among the Democratic base in particular, but the fact is that rage and resentment is not a winning agenda.
Nope.
And when you look at it, he was not selling rage and resentment. He was selling an agenda that works for the working class and actually betters the lives of all Americans, which, by the way, his economic agenda did a great job during his first term. I don't hear any Democrats raising that point. And I'll just say, Democrats think that they can change the perception of their party without changing the actual policies that led to the negative perception in the first place. You cannot run someone like AOC or Bernie Sanders on a national scale. And I say this as someone who is from one of those critical swings.
That's what I said. I said they're not going to win. They're not going to win. Like, I mean, Bernie Sanders, I know, I don't think he's even going to run. But this is why I'm saying, like, and I said this to my wife the minute that I saw that headline. I was like, come on, the Democrats got to do better than this. If they put up AOC, she's not going to win. She's not even going to win if she goes against JD Vance. I don't believe that. And I just don't believe that because AOC is one of the people that people have said she's too far left. Like, she's way too far. So some of her stances, her policies, her views on things where the American people are at right now, I just don't see it.
States. Back in my home state of Michigan, if you think Kamala Harris did poorly, just wait until you run AOC, who is very comfortable in her D+28 advantage New York district in the swing state of Michigan. It will never work. The party has to go back to the center, and you deny that at your own peril.
Can I just finish this talking point about prices coming down in 2 months?
That was 2 months.
From the record highs that were set
He
at the
promised day one.
I think it's only pushing the fact that prices were run up so much under a Democratic.
See, and this is what I mean about being unrealistic as a Democrat. She's like, this lady right here, she's like, he promised day one. And I'm like, dude, even if a Democrat would have won, nothing would have happened on day one. Like, nothing would have happened. Why don't people understand that?
Administration and oil and gas prices and energy prices and electricity prices have come down. So I think you have to let these policies have a chance, because once you have lower energy prices work through a system, that can eventually lead to lower prices. But 2 months that's pretty quick.
2 months and there's still plurality support for tariff.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's still a lot of time left, and I think 2 months is pretty quick. I think it's some of you might say it's a stretch. I think it's a little bit ungraceful. I do, because there's, they make it seem like if Kamala Harris would have won, like, we would already have eggs that are $3, and there's no way that would have happened. So I'm not really sure why people think like that, but like I say sometimes here on the channel, it's usually a lack of understanding, a lack of knowledge, but that wouldn't have happened on day one regardless of who won anyway. But I agree with the other news anchor when she says, I think we need to give it some time. I think we need to let it settle. President Trump even just said, signing the executive order for the 25% tariffs on automobiles, that, hey, listen, this is going to take some time, right? But it's going to happen. The first thing you're probably going to see is a jump in the construction, and then people are going to start making a lot of cars. So if I had to project this out, I would say probably within a year we'll start to see a turn for things. But I get it, like, people are already frustrated and upset, so for them they're like, another year I'm gonna die, and it's like, that's drastic. But we're all frustrated, right? Everybody's frustrated to a certain extent based on their own personal beliefs or whatever moral or ethical system they have set up. But nonetheless, we still have to give it time before we start to see things kick in. Alright guys, so with that being said, we are at the last clip of the live stream, and we end the live stream with a clip from Cliff. Cliff Buell is a YouTube content creator who usually produces Christian content, not usually, pretty much all the time. He does it in the format of YouTube Shorts, or sometimes he does long-standing podcasts and or videos. So if you get a chance to go check Cliff's channel out, please go do that. That's Cliff at Buell. So his last name is Buell. Cliff Buell, one word. That's his YouTube channel. And today we're looking at, does God call Jesus God? So, for some of you, this might be a little bit confusing, because it's like, does God call Jesus God? So there are actually verses in Scripture where we can see the Father addressing the Son, Jesus, in this manner. So we're going to watch this, and I actually also pulled up a Bible verse. There's a couple Bible verses I want to go over with you guys. Nothing too deep, right? Because we're not doing that type of content at this moment. But since I do end all my live streams with this type of content, this is just where we're at. So we are going to go over some Bible verses. So y'all just going to have to deal with it, because I'm the one reading. So it's not that bad, right? I'm the one reading. So let's watch what Cliff has to say about this.
Watch this.
Where did you read Jesus is God? I've never read that. That's what Muslims will tell you. That's what Jehovah's Witness will tell you. Where does it say it? Easy. You go to Hebrews chapter 1, verse 8. These two words will blow away the argument that Jesus is not God. Two little words. But unto the Son, God says, the Father says, thy throne, O God, is forever and ever. Stop. God, the Father, tells God, the Son, thy throne, O God, is forever and ever. The word, O God, destroys the other cults. Thy throne, O God. God the Father calls Jesus Christ God, and he says, your throne is forever and ever. That's great, but they'll still argue with you. If you go on a little further in the book of Hebrews, not only does it call Jesus God, it tells you that Jesus Christ created the heavens, they're the work of his hands, and the earth. He laid the foundation of the earth.
Watch this.
Where did you read Jesus?
And that's very true. So I love the fact that he went to the book of Hebrews, because you can find all of that in there with what he's saying as far as like Jesus being the creator, laying the foundations. And a lot of people, this is controversial for some people. They some religions do recognize Jesus maybe as a great teacher, definitely a man that lived. Some will say a theologian, biblical scholar. Some will say a prophet, right? Some people recognize him as such. In Christianity, we recognize Jesus as God. So we do say that he is the Son of God, and he does identify himself as that as well. But we say that he is also God. So this is where people will kind of say, oh, this is why I don't mess with Christianity, because they have three gods. Well, it's not three gods, right? There's three different roles, right, that these people have. So it's hard for the human mind to grasp this. Some people have done well, kind of, we will say, at explaining this. Sometimes you have the scientific approach where people are saying, think about like water, ice, and steam, water, ice, and hot ice. Like they're trying to explain to you the essence of all three of the beings, right? But it's not three gods in one. It's one essence. So this man makes a great point when he goes to the book of Hebrews and he says that God says to Jesus, oh, he says, oh God, your throne in heaven will last forever, right? So this is God the Father speaking to God the Son. And he's debunking what some people think when they say that Jesus is not God, right? So if you guys are thinking, well, what religions believe Jesus is not God? Specifically, we would say definitely not Mormonism. We would say definitely not Islam. And we would say most certainly not Jehovah's Witness, right? So we would say at least those three for sure. We know that they do not identify with Jesus as being God, right? It's something else to them. Maybe a prophet, maybe a great teacher, but just not God. So I want to jump over to this Bible verse. I went to the book of Matthew. So I'm actually in the New Testament. Just like this gentleman who was reading from Cliff's Clip. He's in the New Testament as well with Hebrews. I'm reading from Matthew chapter 22. So there are a plethora of things going on in this chapter, right? We have the parable of the wedding banquet. So Jesus is telling a story. Then we have the paying the imperial tax to Caesar. So Jesus is being asked questions about government and taxes. Then we have marriage at the resurrection. Jesus is being asked more questions about marriage and how does it work in the resurrection. And they bring up this ludicrous story about a woman who, she married one brother and he had 6 other brothers, and then he died and she married this one and this one and this one and this one. And then when she dies and gets to heaven, whose wife will she be? So they're asking him questions like that. And then we have the greatest commandment when we have an expert of the law, not challenge, but ask Jesus, teacher, what is the greatest commandment in the law, right? So basically, okay, we know that you're a teacher of God's word, and we know that you're of God, right? And that you try to live by his principles. These are things that sometimes they would say in text to Jesus. So that's some of the context behind the question. So what they're saying is, out of everything that you stand for and everything that you taught and you're teaching us, what's the greatest thing out of all of these things? So Again, another question. And then we come to the end of Matthew 22, and we see finally Jesus poses a question, which I love when Jesus does things like this, right? This is what I love scripture. So in context, what we see in the chapter, right? Because this is usually how I study, like in context of an entire chapter. We see a lot of challenges here. But before all of the challenges that people present to Jesus, or questions, should I say, we see Jesus tell this story about a wedding banquet. And in this story, there is a gentleman who wants to throw a wedding banquet, and he sends out invitations to different people. And these people give excuses as to why they can't make it to the wedding banquet. You know, some are busy with business, some maybe just got married, you know, and some just, you know, they have other things to do. So they give these excuses as to why they can't come to the wedding banquet. You know, the person who's throwing the wedding banquet, the man gets mad, scripture says, and it says that he sends his servant out to the byways, highways, some translations, shout out to KJV, says hedges, and it just says go basically out there to any and everywhere and find people and bring them in, right? Like, it doesn't matter who they are, it doesn't matter like what kind of businesses they own or work for, just invite them and tell them to come in. So the servant goes and does that. These people come into the wedding banquet, they're all enjoying themselves, and during this time, Jewish tradition, you would have been dressed a certain way if you were attending a wedding banquet. And then you basically, they kind of paint this picture in scripture where the man who's hosting the wedding banquet comes and kind of checks on the banquet, and he notices someone in the banquet who doesn't have on the same wedding clothes as everyone else. So he goes up to that man and he says, "Friend, how did you manage to get in here?" You know, and then scripture says that the man was thrown out with weeping and gnashing of teeth. So essentially, if I want to break this down, because I really try to come on here and like not make this difficult, because I have a lot of people who jump in here, don't go to church, don't read the Bible, but still like to ask me questions. So I like to be thorough with this. Essentially, you know, Jesus is painting this picture of, you know, many are called, few are chosen, and he can recognize the ones who are chosen, right? We can say that that's the short end of like the context to like the wedding banquet, right? And then after that, that's where Jesus gets to ask all these different questions, right? Okay, what about paying the imperial tax? So they're bringing like a coin to Jesus and they're asking about imperial tax. If you guys are wondering what that is, an imperial tax would be a tax that would be levied on one group of people and not the other. So at this time, this would be a tax that the Jewish people would have to pay, but if you were a Roman citizen, you would not have to pay it. So they go to Jesus and they're asking him this question. They're being a little facetious. It's kind of a trick question, and they're asking him, you know, Caesar puts this imperial tax on us, and we basically want to know, what do you say about this? Should we pay it? Jesus asks for a coin whose face is on it. They say Caesar's, and depending on what translation you're reading, it might say honor Caesar with what belongs to Caesar, and honor God with what belongs to God. Render to Caesar what's Caesar's, render to God what's God's. So Jesus answers that question. Then they come with the silly marriage question about the woman and the 7 brothers, and she's married every single one, and now everybody's dead. Whose wife is she at the resurrection? And Jesus basically says to them, like, it's in the simplest form, but I know what he says to them, because he basically comes out and says, you don't understand the scripture. But I want to tell you guys the exact way that he answered when they asked him this question. Finally, the woman died. Now then, at the resurrection, whose wife will she be of the 7, since all of them were married to her? Jesus replied, you are in error, because you do not know the scriptures or the power of God. So, Jesus basically right there just comes out and he says, well, you clearly don't know what the Bible says, and you don't know the power of the Lord. And he begins to answer their question, and he tells them that, they'll be like angels, they won't be given in marriage, or they won't marry. But then he also goes on to say that, have you not read what God said to you? I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So he's not the God of the dead, but the living, basically saying that Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham are still alive. And when the crowds heard this, they were astonished at his teaching. So Jesus kind of answers that question and kind of debunks any of their, silly fantasies about it. And then they ask, what's the greatest commandment? This expert of the law. And it's interesting, because you would think an expert of the law right? So the expert of the law would have definitely surely understood the Torah. So you would have think this person would have had some type of understanding about what the greatest commandment would be, but this is where it's kind of, they're not necessarily challenging Jesus. Let's just say it's more like they're putting him through a series of tests, and this expert asks him, teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? And Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. So Jesus answers this person's question about what is the greatest, right? Because that's the motive behind this question. Like, out of every single thing you've been saying and teaching and living by, what would you say is the greatest? And that's when Jesus goes on and answers his question. And then we come down to finally, after all of that, Jesus tells his story and all of this questioning and testing and trying to prove, Jesus finally, at the very end of the chapter, this is so Jesus, he said, he doesn't say, but he poses a question, right? So I'm going to read this part to you guys. So we're in Matthew 22, I'm reading verses 41 to 45. It says, whose son is the Messiah? So this is the way it goes. It says, while the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus asked them, what do you think about the Messiah? Whose son is he? The son of David, they replied, meaning the Pharisees. He said to them, meaning Jesus, how is it then that David, speaking by the Spirit, calls him Lord? Right? So how is it that David calls the Messiah Lord? For he says, Jesus is saying, David said, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I put your enemies under your feet. If then David calls him Lord, so Jesus is saying, so if David calls the Messiah Lord, how can he be his son? And then it says this, no one could say a word in reply. And from that day on, no one dared to ask him any more questions. Now, I thought this was interesting, right? Because you have all of these Pharisees, Sadducees, expert of the law, rabbis, these people are all asking Jesus all of these questions, right? And he's just kind of complying and answering their questions, right? And then he poses this question that, based on the people surrounded around him asking all of this, you would think that they know. So he poses the question. He says, okay, so what do you say about the Messiah? Whose son is he, right? And because they're Pharisees and they're Sadducees and they're rabbis and they're teachers, they're like, oh, we know this question, right? We know the answer to this question. The Messiah is the son of David. Like, he's David's son, right? And they're saying that because they knew that the Messiah was going to come through the lineage of David. He would come through the line, the genealogy line of David. So that's why they reply, he's the son of David, right? And we see this in scripture where that is referenced, Jesus is referenced in this way, son of David. So he says to them, Jesus says, oh, okay, so the Messiah is the son of David, right? The Messiah, who would also be Jesus Christ, who would be God. And Jesus is playing along with them. And he's saying, okay, so the Messiah will be the son of David. And then Jesus goes, so how is it that then David called him Lord? Like, if the Messiah is David's son, why would David refer them to the Messiah as God? Now Jesus is asking them this question. And he says, this is the drop the mic right here, because when this happens, it's always hilarious to me. And then Jesus, around all these Pharisees, Sadducees, scribes, and teachers, he quotes scripture to them. And he's quoting Psalm 101. He's quoting Psalm 101. And Jesus says to them, well, David did say, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I put your enemies under my feet. Boom. So he quotes the scripture. He says, so if then David calls him Lord, then if David's calling the Messiah Lord, then how is the Messiah David's son? and everyone is just quiet. No one has nothing to say. No one can say anything. They can't even answer the question. So if you guys are wondering, okay, Q, you went through all of that. Why did you bring us through all of that to tell us that? Because if you look at the chapter in context, from the very beginning, Jesus is saying, like, listen, the people who God has chosen, and who will come into the kingdom because they don't recognize who Jesus is. They don't recognize him as God. Jesus is like, those people are already recognizable. I'm able to see those people. And the fact that you guys are asking me all these types of questions is showing me that these are not just, these are not just questions that are of God, but you yourselves are not acting godly. You yourselves are not acting of God. And we can say that just based off the questions that they're answering and the type of people who they are. There are people that should have been able to answer these questions that they're asking Jesus. And this is why sometimes Jesus refutes back and he says, you're in error because you don't know the scripture. You don't know what the scripture says. And why would Jesus say to biblical religious teachers, you don't know what the scripture says? Well, because they literally pick and chose what they read, right? And the easiest way to think about it is it's a sweet little ditty that we could say you would use in ministry, right? Or not even just in ministry, to memorize a Bible verse. That's actually better. And I thought it was the cutest thing, but some people will say, as far as the Pharisees, you could say they are spelling it out, Phar, far I see, right? So the Pharisees, they were able to not necessarily wholeheartedly believe in the resurrection, but let's just say they didn't refute it like the Sadducees did. And for Sadducees, based on the way it's said, people would say sad you see, right? And sad meaning because these were people that did not subscribe to any type of resurrection. They did not believe a resurrection could happen. When you was dead and gone. So they wasn't trying to hear anything about some dead guy getting up and walking around, because to them it just wasn't true. But to the Pharisees, they would read past, the Torah, and they would be more familiar with just the first 5 books, as the Sadducees would be more familiar with the Torah, which was just the first 5 books. So this is why Jesus is challenging them the way that he's challenging them, and he's asking these questions. So yes, Jesus is God. This is what we believe in Christianity. This is who Jesus is to us. He is wonderful counselor, right? Everything that scripture says about him, the good shepherd, right? The Son of God. And it also says that everything was created by him, through him. So we have to keep in mind that if we're looking in the Genesis account and we're seeing creation happen and it's God said, God said, God said, God said, well, which God said is that? Because scripture already goes into detail to explicitly tell us that everything that was made by Jesus, through Jesus, right? So yeah, there is absolute truth to what the gentleman was saying on Cliff's clip, that Jesus is God and that there is biblical proof that Jesus is God. So with that being said, guys, we're going to wrap this live stream up. I appreciated hanging out with you guys tonight. I enjoyed it. I appreciate you stopping by and chilling on a corner with me so we can go through all the crazy news and then end with the Bible scripture, which is always a good thing, but still nonetheless react to real news in real time, because hey, we live in this world. Even though as Christians we're not of it, I still live in this world, and Jesus already rebuked people for not being attuned to the sign of the times, right? He said this to plenty of the biblical scholars in that day. Pharisees, Sadducees, they were always asking him questions, challenging him. And Jesus would tell him things like, when the sky changes, when the weather changes, that it's going to rain, or you'll say, hey, it'll be a sunny day today, but you're not aware of what's happening spiritually, right? So in context, we could say that's what Jesus was getting at. You're not aware of that. So you can tell all these signs of the day, but you're not aware of what God's doing. You're not aware of the way God is working in your life. So I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. We will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow I will be on earlier because based on my analytics, that's when more of my people are on. So hey guys, if I generally I'm on here between 1500 and 1700, which is 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. But my analytics will also tell me when most of my people are on. So if you see me shift a day, that would be because that's the day where it's best time for me to be on. It's usually not a scheduled thing at that point. So for the majority of the time, I'm usually on between 1500 and 1700, 5 p.m., 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. But sometimes on Wednesdays it's tweaked a little bit. Thursdays is a little tweaked. Fridays, Usually I'm on around 4, and then Saturdays it's usually earlier in the day. So just keep that in mind, guys. So I will see you guys again tomorrow. Tomorrow we will be on earlier, more than likely around 3 p.m. ish, 3:30. I'm going to double check those analytics. But until next time, what I always say, guys, take care of yourselves, take care of one another. Love yourselves and love one another, and be peaceful. Peace.